Howdy doody. So this is the situation. First of all, I have a cold, so my voice sounds weird, so I'm going to try not to talk too loud. This is the situation. So I've got this pocket watch here, and I completely repaired it. It doesn't look completely repaired right now, but I did completely repair it. And when I went to put on the hand, like press on my hands, I pressed down the second hand, and what do you know, the stem part, or the pivot part of the fourth wheel broke off that attaches into the second hand. So that caused me all kinds of problems. So I had to strip the watch apart again. Then I actually unsuccessfully tried to make a brand new pivot for this hand. Let me see if I can zoom in here a little bit. So there it is there, and I tried to drill a new pivot, and I was also unsuccessful at doing that because of the size of the pivot, and more so the type of drill I was using. It was a made in China carbide drill bits that are, I think, crappy. So that didn't work. So it's a beautiful watch. It's a Bartlett watch, Waltham. So I thought, okay, what am I going to do here? So why don't we just see if I can find another movement. So I did some internet hunting, and I found another movement, same kind of vintage, and it is a P something excuse me, P something Bartlett, Waltham, Massachusetts. I think it's PJ Bartlett. Anyway, someone will correct me. And this movement was in pretty good condition. I had a peek at it, and I noticed that the pivot for the fourth wheel is there, which is good. Plus, there were a lot of other parts here that I could reuse. Plus, it came with the brand new, with a face that is actually in good condition. So the dilemma here is, do I use this movement and just effectively take this movement, which is an older one, I believe, because it's a American Waltham, and it's not the standard type print as this one is. So I'm assuming that this is an older movement, and recase it here, or do I steal the fourth wheel like that and then fix the other one? So what I'm going to actually do is see if this movement here has some energy, and whether I can actually wind this a bit. So to do that, what I do is, I'm not sure if this is wound up or what, so I'm going to just turn this for a few seconds. It doesn't look like it looks like the cannon pinion is on there, but the wheel for the top is not there. So let me just see. So what I would do is this. Seems to be pretty wound up, I think. Probably people call it overwound, but it's not really overwound. There's no such thing as overwound. So one thing you can do, see if I can try to open my screwdriver case without moving the camera too much. So one thing you can do is just relieve the pressure on the mainspring here a bit. And there's a little knobby right here, and what you do is you apply a little bit of pressure. If you wind it up just a bit, then you push this up like that, and it relieves the pressure, and then you hold it and let it sort of scrape back a bit, which is what I'm doing now. Sometimes I think there's so much pressure on that mainspring that it pushes the pivots against the jewel hole walls and creates friction that is no good. So, and then what I do then, and I think I'll try to do a close-up here to see if this works. Just hang on. Alright, there we go. So what I do then is I will take a screwdriver or a toothpick. It's probably smarter to take a toothpick to do this, but for now I'll just use a screwdriver. I just lightly touch the balance staff like that and see if it swings back and forth. And this one doesn't seem to want to swing, so which means that the energy is not getting through all the wheels to the pallet fork. I think I said balance staff, but what I meant was pallet fork. So that movement's got no power in it, so I might just strip this down and use the components. So given that I couldn't get any power to the pallet fork, I don't think I have many options here. So what I'm going to do is take all the pressure off the mainspring here. So again, as I said, what you do is you put in the bench key here. These are called bench keys, and you apply a little bit of winding pressure on this mainspring, and then you let it go very slowly, because this thing will just wing right out of your hand. And as that happens, you're going to break the mainspring in there. And it's an older mainspring, so you may have a problem anyway. So you probably would have to replace that mainspring at any rate, because it's just because it's older. So I'm just taking the energy out of there, and I can just feel it unwinding. So I think that's pretty much it. It's not really unwinding much more. The gears seem to be a little bit jammed too. So the good news is that this watch, there we go, that's done. So it's the geared side, so the energy is completely removed from this. I'll just show you from this side here. So if I just put a little pressure on it, turn it this way, and then press the top here, I get nothing left. So the energy is completely removed from it. I don't want to break this pivot here on the bottom, because if I break this pivot, I'm back to the same situation I was in before. So see if I can find a movement holder that's a bit bigger to put this in, just so I can give it some pressure here, place it in correctly. So what I'm going to do is just strip this down quickly. I have a cold today, so I'm not sure how well I'll do any of this, but I'm going to try anyway. So just happen to have the right size screwdriver here. When you're taking the screws out, what you do is you put a whole lot of pressure on that screw to make it to do the first untightening of the screw. And you need different size screwdrivers to wedge plates out and stuff. So I just kind of ease this top plate out and then take out the mainspring, and then move that over. I think these will end up becoming parts for other Bartlett watches that I end up getting or have, and I can effectively use these in the future. So I'm just going to be very careful here and make sure I don't ruin anything as I take this out of take it out of the can, as they say. Right, ever so slowly here. There we go. Put that aside, and there's what we have now. And what I should do too is just compare the two plates here, because the plates, they don't look exactly, actually they look exactly the same. Different movement number, but I hate jogging or mixing movements, but I should check the joules on this here to make sure that they're not better than the joules on this one here. So, because I could actually just mix the components up a bit and have a much better watch. I don't think these Bartlett watches are worth a fortune, but they're well made. So what you do, what I typically do when I'm unscrewing the screws is I'll unscrew them, and then I'll wait till I feel a little click and I know that they're completely unscrewed. So, and I have to put these parts in the right place here, so I get the right screws with the right plates, and etc., etc. These screws are pretty loose. This is looks like some stuff's been done with this watch already. It's pretty old, so I suspect it has. All three of these screws seem to be pretty loose. That would just pop right out. So I'm just hoping that the wheel that I'm looking for is the right one. So I'm trying to get this out here, and I think I got the pallet fork is stuck. So I'm going to have a look in here to see what the situation is. Just look sideways here. No, there it goes. That's fine. It just fell out. So luckily I don't need this anymore. So there is the fourth wheel is always straight down from where the winding mechanism is. These are pretty stuck. It's like these have been in place for quite a while. There's my fourth wheel. I'm going to have to see if it's exactly the same as the other one. I probably don't have to take any of this other stuff apart. Let me look here. Is that my fourth wheel? I think it is my fourth wheel. This one here is stuck in there too, so I'll just have a peek here, because I've got the upper and lower jewels for the balance. Here's the pallet fork. It looks like it's in pretty good condition, so I might be able to reuse some of this as well. So I'm going to move this off to the side, and this is what I have so far. And I'm just going to have a quick look at the jewels with a magnifying glass to make sure I'm not that I have the best of all situations. I really want to use the vintage one here though, so I'll just move this out of the way, because I did clean this watch movement before. So now what I have the old fourth wheel, and there is the. I gotta remove that pivot from the second hand. I'll do that later. But there's my fourth wheel, and there's the original plate for the movement I'm going to reassemble. And there's the other fourth wheel. Now, theoretically, when I looked at the movement numbers, I went on the Pocket Watch database to actually look at the movement numbers, and the movement numbers were exactly the same. So theoretically, this should work. I'm hoping. I'm looking at the leaf here and the counts, and it looks like it's just the right size. So what I'm going to do is reassemble this and see if I'm in luck or not. So let me just turn this off for a sec, because I got a cough. So this is my spare parts Waltham movement here. I'll probably move that to a different container so I don't waste one of these for it, but it's always good to keep the dust off it. And I'm going to reassemble the other one. So this is what my wife wants me to drink to get rid of my cold. It's called, I think the cup is Witch's Brew, but she's got all kinds of essential oil stuff in there, whatever it is, and she said, here, drink this and sign your insurance policy. But drink this, no, actually sign insurance policy, then drink this, and then we're good. So to reassemble this watch, I've got to drop all the gears in here, and then I've got to put the top plate back on, this plate here, and then I've got to reassemble the movement dust cover ring, and the crystal for the top needs to be glued back in. Other than that, it should be no issue. But reassembling this is not as easy as you'd think. So I'm going to drop the gears in and go from there. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got lots of gears to drop in here. And I got to do it in the right order or I'm in trouble. So this gear obviously isn't going to go in next, but I'm going to check out and see. I usually take a photo of this just to make sure I got it right, and because I've got a cold today, I'm definitely going to see if I can find the photo of the gears so I can put them in the right order instead of showing you how I can screw it up on video so it can be in last forever. So just a quick tip here, when you're doing this, I just took a photo of the gears. It just popped up on me, but I just took a photo of the gears that were and how they're in place for this movement, so I can drop them back in the exact same way, just so I don't have to use my incredible memory. So I have discovered something here, and what I've discovered is this fourth wheel here. It is the wrong fourth wheel, which is amazing. So the pivot here for the second hand on top, see if I can zoom in a bit here, just to show you how this stuff goes. The pivot here for the second hand on here, and the fourth wheel should be on this side, right? And going through here, but the leaf or the pinion that's on top should be on the bottom. So, and if I look at the previous one, and these are both Walton movements, and supposedly this is the same. Supposedly this is the same number, like gear number, but I think that's must be crap. Because in this case here, if you look at that, the gear here, the pivot for the second hand would have been on the top of that pinion, because this is where the bottom part goes here. So this would go like this, and it would go through there, and then the pinion is below, so that it can engage the 1, 2, third wheel. So engage the third wheel like that. So in fact, this nice little gear here won't work on this watch. So now I think I may go back to that other movement and see if I can reassemble that other movement. Maybe clean it first, reassemble it, and see if I can get some action out of that movement. Because this ain't going to work, and I'd like to get this thing put together. So this movement may end up becoming the spare after all. So this is how it goes in the world of watch repair. So when I'm cleaning parts, I typically lower them in. I put the finger cots on here so I don't get any of this lighter fluid on my fingers, and then I use Zippo lighter fluid, and you just pour that right on the movement like that. And I'm going to put enough in there because I've got to clean the wheels and stuff like that too. So do that. I wouldn't recommend smoking while you're cleaning watches. That could be a bit disastrous. I have a knife here on the side because I'm also going to use some pegwood later on to peg out the holes of the jewels and make sure they're all spanky clean. Here's my pegwood here, and I usually like to sharpen the tips to clean out the jewel holes. So what I do here, and I've got watch paper here to dry this out, and I'll lay that aside so you can see where it is here. Just again, doing this work and videotaping it can be kind of interesting, but I'll just use a paintbrush here, just an artsy paintbrush here, and clean out the movement from this side, then flip it around. Try not to splash it when you're putting it down, because it can make a mess. And so the first thing I do is just clean the parts, and this cleans it up pretty fast. And you can see the gunge. If it hasn't been cleaned in a long time, you can pretty much see the stuff that's there. And I also use Rodico later on to get rid of it, and then I'll lay it down on a piece of paper like that, and then grab maybe some gears here and do the gears next. Make sure they're nice and clean, and again I use Rodico, and also I use soft, like balsa wood, and I use that to actually roll the gears, and by doing that I clean the gears nicely. So make sure I don't break anything when I'm doing this. That's why sometimes I'll take that piece of pegwood that I have, and I won't use the same one for cleaning, and I'll hold the plate down like that, to clean it. And then I'll flip that around. Make sure you can see this properly, but I'll flip that around like this, and then I'll go to the other side. And I want to make sure that center wheel hole is nice and clean here too. And everything's pretty loose here, so as long as you don't hold on to things too tight, and stuff won't break. So once I've got this like so, again, it's tricky to videotape and do this at the same time. And there we go. And I just move that aside onto the piece of paper. And then for the gears, I stick my my piece of pegwood on into one of the openings of the gears, like so, and then flip that around. And before I put this together, I just make sure I poke that end of the gear in my piece of wood. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. There's that there. I put the gears down. That's one. Grab this is the gear that I was hoping I could replace that other center, the second wheel, which is a fourth wheel actually, with this gear here, and I was unsuccessful because the movement that came in the mail was actually different than the movement I had. And I didn't. I looked up the serial numbers and it looked like the exact same gear number, but it turns out it wasn't. So sometimes you end up getting all excited and end up with a minor failure. So anyway, I'm going to just keep cleaning this watch, and I'll come back a little bit later once the parts are all cleaned, and we'll do the reassembly and see if this thing actually works. Now, to expedite the drying process, what I typically do is I have this new little vintage air blower, and I'll just blow air on the movement pieces, and this is lighter fluid, so it evaporates completely with absolutely no trace. Now, I gotta tell you right now, I was a bad boy here, so I'm just telling you right now, because I did not disassemble the whole thing, because what I want to do first is see if the thing actually works. So I don't want to take the time to disassemble the keyless portions of it, or any of the other parts. I cleaned it all, but I didn't completely disassemble it. I will oil it all, and I will see if it all works. And then if it works really well, I will most likely disassemble it again and then clean the keyless mechanisms completely. So, but I don't want to waste my time doing that unless I know that this movement is actually going to run for me. So that is why you're seeing the whole movement here. I figured this is my movement. I'm not doing this for somebody. If I was actually doing this for somebody, I would probably take the time and disassemble the whole thing, because I know that I've got to make this thing work. So in this case here, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I got to go see if I can find another fourth wheel for that other movement. So I'll do this, and I'll be back as soon as these components are dry. So I noticed another thing, that this watch, which was the one I'm trying to rebuild that I bought, it does not have the minute wheel, or whatever this wheel is. So I'm going to borrow it from this and then put it in here, and hopefully the whole thing will work. I also borrowed this wheel as well, which is the hour wheel. So, and it fits on here nicely, so there's no issue. So I'm going to see if the minute wheel actually fits. So I got to take this off very carefully with this watch and then put it back on the other one. So I took the wheel off, and now I'm going to see if I've got success or not. So I'm just going to slide that in and see if it fits. I've got to line up the cannon pinion here and make sure these leaf gears fit, and I think I have success. So if I do this, and then this, and this should integrate in with this, and it looks like it does. So that, my friends, looks like it's success. But before I declare success, what I'm going to do is I'm going to back this off, right? Nice and easy. And then I'm going to wind this just a bit here. See what I get. Now this is winding the mainspring here, so I gotta pull this back and just pretend I'm setting the time. So, and this needs to be oiled too, so pull that back like that. And then le voila, as it is I think in French. And there we go. It all works, which is good. So now I'm just going to oil the various parts of this and start shoving her back together again. So these are borrowed components from the other movement. It's funny, these ones work perfectly, but that fourth wheel was wrong. The pinion on the fourth wheel was on the wrong side, so that kind of sucks. So, and and when you oil this, it depends on, like, you put the heavier oil right where these major components are, and you put the lighter oil where the pivots and these sort of things and the wheels are. So, but I'm not going to get into oiling because there's plenty of videos on how to oil a watch. So anyway, I'm going to start reassembly here because I think I've got all the components I need. As I said earlier, I had to peg out the jewel holes to make sure that they're clean. So I sharpened this piece of pegwood, and I'm just pegging out the holes here ever so lightly. So, and I know this one's been pegged already, so the cannon pinion was out, and the I popped it back in again. So, and I think on the other side, let me look really closely here. I don't have any big issues here either. So I just should peg these ones out as well. And you don't press too hard when you're pegging out these holes because you could damage something. And that is not good. So, and these are burnished in jewels, so if you have to put one back in, you got to burnish it in again, which is a bit of work. So you don't want that to happen. So anyway, that's how you do that. So I take a big fat piece of Rodico here, and I just smudge the holes individually, just in case there's any dust or anything. I can see the holes are in pretty good shape here. There are no issues here. The jewels look really good, so no major issues at all. And I just want to put this over the top of that to make sure there's no dust or anything in the leaves here. So you Rodico the gears as well to make sure that there's nothing there as well. So this is what we have so far. It's looking pretty good. So I'm ready to drop the gears in. So this is the top. I have the top plate over here. Let me just zoom out a bit here. So I have the top plate over here, and I have the gears here. And again, I should have took a picture of this before I reassembled it, because I got to figure out which gear goes where. But I do know that from the winding mechanism here, this actually might be a hunter configuration, which is going to be interesting to look at the other one and see if the plates are the same. But I think this might be a hunter configuration because the winding mechanism is here, so the gear would typically be over here, so the fourth wheel, and it ain't. So I'm going to have to have a quick look at that, because I'm not sure if I recase it. Can I recase it as a hunting configuration and there's no issue? So I'm going to drop a little oil in here. So I said it earlier, this is a piece of wood you use, and you just push this down on the gear. It's like a piece of balsa wood. You just put it on the pivot on the end of the gear, and you do it to all your gears. And that gets any remaining dirt off it. I also used a Rodico too. And then I've got to apply some oils here. And the thicker oils will go on the heavier gears, and the thinner oils will go on the lighter gears. I read a lot about oiling, and there's all kinds of things you can do, but in general, you want to make sure that the thing is oiled well. And I do basically make sure that the keyless mechanisms are well oiled too for friction, just to reduce friction and put the right oils in the right places. So And and there's oil pots in the bottom of these, so you can oil from the bottom of those. I just want to make sure there's a little bit of the thicker oil in the keyless mechanism here, so it dries it nicely and there's no issues. And so I'll put a little bit of that in there. I probably should refresh my oil here. It looks pretty gungy now. Gungy as opposed to Gandhi. There we go. So that's good for now. And then I got to do the old trial and error and drop the gears down. So this one here, this is the mainspring is the first gear. So this would be the second gear. Sorry, mainspring center is the second. This is the third, right? And because there's the gear here and a leaf on the bottom, I'm assuming that it goes like this. This is a big assumption though. Like that. And then this gear is the second hands, so which would be on the bottom plate, so this gear would go through like this. So now I probably have to put this gear in first and then the other gear in after. So this is the fun you can have if you don't basically take a photo. Say there's that gear dropping in like that, and then this gear goes in like this. You see, does that work? This gear's not dropping in. Oh, there we go. So that gear goes in like that. And then I've got this gear here, which is the escapement. And so the escapement, most likely, I don't think it goes in like this because it's high heavy, but I'll have a look at that and see if that works. Because usually the leaf would be on the bottom part, but if there's no space for it, it goes on the top, so it would go like this, which is like awkward. Anyway, I'm going to fit them all together and have a look. Alright, when I reassemble this movement, one of the things I do is to put the pallet fork back in. I put it on the top plate and then use a piece of Rodico to hold it in place, because I got to flip that around like that, and then I got to do a lot of playing with these gears to see if they can fall in place. So it's really tricky to do. So this sometimes can take you half an hour to get this back, the top plate back in the movement. So anyway, I'm going to go away and start fooling around with it. So you put the top plate down, and then you put a couple of screws in very lightly. I'll do this while I'm videotaping here. I think I need to use a bigger screwdriver. Really lightly with so the plate kind of stays where it needs to be. And then, let me just get this third one in here. I'm not sure if I need the third one in, but I'm going to put it in anyway. So once you've done that, you get this one in here, like so. Right, then I use this pick here, and on the inside just move the gears around until I get all four to drop. This is the hard part. I've done it a lot of times, and sometimes you're lucky and they just drop, and other times it takes a long time. So that actually didn't take that long. So once you have all of the pivots have dropped through, and again tighten the screws on top, but again ever so lightly, because what you want to do then, just tighten them just a bit, just so all the pivots don't move out of place, right? And then what I do is I grab the Rodico right from the bottom here. Let's see if I got a new camera for videotaping, and it's not an auto focus, which I find is actually better, because the autofocus camera tends to autofocus all the time, which is crappy for doing lathe work. So there you go. That's the Rodico is now out, and then what I'll do is I'll take this movement out of the holder, and I have a really good look at the top to make sure the pivots are all in place, which they are. So let me zoom in here, see if that makes a difference. So there you go. So all the pivots are are in place, and I can see the balance fork in here, and it's actually in the right place. And then I got to look through the back end and make sure that the pivots are also sticking through the back here, right? Which they seem to be. So that's all the pivots are in place here as well. And then I will drop in the mainspring. Now again, like I said, I want to see if this thing works first. So what I'll do is drop the mainspring in. I'll give it a little bit of oil and stuff, but normally I'd take the mainspring apart, and then oil, like take the spring apart and take the center arbor out, and then oil the mainspring as well. That way you've got everything's cleaned and oiled. But I want to make sure this thing works before I go into too much detail here. And I'm going to put a little bit of oil on the various pivots for the wheels here. Not too much, but this is the lightest watch oil you can use. I'm not going to bother naming stuff here because I could show you the oils that I use, but maybe I'll do that after. But that's the lightest oil that you use, and I just want to drop a bit of oil in the pivots. Now, one thing I don't know for sure is if I don't know if the balance and balance cock from the other movement will work on this movement. Because if they don't work on this movement, then I got the opposite problem, which is I don't have a balance cock for this movement. So, I will test that out in a second. Let me just flip this over, and I'm going to drop a few spots of oil on here too. So, and make sure I've got this oiled accordingly. And I think this watch movement here, it looks like it's got fixed banking pins. So I'll have a look at it, but it did look like it had fixed banking pins. So I'm going to put a little bit of oil on this gear here on the plate, just to give it some movement. And then I'm going to put a little thicker oil around the gears here, just to give them some lubrication. And you just have to oil like one gear, and then it passes it to all the other gears, so you don't need a lot of oil. You just want to make sure that you're reducing as much friction as possible. So, and you definitely don't want the oil to spread, because it will collect, and that's not a good thing. I got a little leaf spring here I got to deal with here, so put a little bit of oil on the leaf spring here. And then I don't need to oil this, but I would like to put a little bit of oil on the mainspring here. Now just a tip here. There's a ratchet for the mainspring that sits on top of the mainspring, so it's a mainspring gear here. Just a tip is that when you use the oil, if the faster you pull out the oiler, the more oil you get onto the tip of it. The slower you pull out, the less oil. So you'll find that just through experience and over time. So there we go. So that's that. And then turn this bugger around here, and then I'm going to just oil where the mainspring drops in here, and then I'm also going to oil the plate for the mainspring as well to make sure I've got good lubrication there too, and there's less friction. And then I'll be able to see whether this movement's going to be able to give me any power in a few seconds. So what I'll do first is drop the barrel in for the mainspring, and be very careful about this. So first of all, I should drop it in the right way. Right, that wouldn't hurt. And then we grab it from the arbor here. And drop the barrel in carefully. Again, when you do this with your videotaping, it's never as easy for some reason. So I just need to fart around with this for a few seconds to get it in properly. I can see the wheel touching the plate here, and just need to get it in and not destroy any gears or anything else. So I'm going to turn off the video in 2 seconds so I can have a look at it a different way. The mainspring barrel is now in, so put a little bit of lubrication on the barrel itself. Right here. And then I'm using a thicker oil, and that allows the arbor to rotate when you wind the mainspring, and then it powers up that mainspring that way. So allowing the arbor the spring to tighten up, and you should always clean the tips off your oilers after you finish using them. So they're nice and clean, and then I've already taken this and oiled this and cleaned that, so I'll just throw this on top. It should just fit on nicely. See if it does. Where is the hole? Where is the hole? I am missing the hole. Oh, there it is, way over here. I am missing the hole. Oh, there we go. So got it. Like that. And then I've got 2 screws I gotta put in here. I got one here. Make sure the movement is in the right position so you can see this stuff. Hopefully it's not too, the focus is not too bad. Try not to get my fingers all over it. You should really wear finger cocks to do this work and not do what I'm doing. So, what is it? Don't do what I do, do what I say. So, anyway. So we do that, and then we reassemble this. Not sure what's harder is doing all the lathe work. Like, I love making balance staffs on my lathes. It's kind of fun, especially when you get the balance running again and it's running perfectly. In this case here, I made the balance staff for the other movement. I had to make the balance staff to get it running again, so that was the challenge. Now, if I were to wind this up, let me just back the camera off a bit so you can see what I'm up to. And I'm hoping I get a little bit of a wind on this thing. Let me get my winding mechanism here. So seems to be some tension in the winding, which is nice. Does seem to be kind of tickety, but. And then what I do is I got a bit of tension on there, so I'm going to zoom in again, just so you can see it, or maybe just do this and then, and now I'll just zoom in. What the heck? Hopefully the digital zoom is good enough. Yeah, you can see that. So what I do is I take this little piece of wood and I touch the this and see if it moves, and yes it does. Look at that. So if you can actually see that, not sure if you can see that or not because there's lighting here, but when I touch this it flicks back and forth, which means there's power, a good amount of power going to that. Just turn around here, there's too much reflection on my light up top here. Just turn this light away here a bit, and it's probably going to be better. Oh, there we go. That's much better. Should have done that earlier. Anyway, so when I touch that, it flicks back and forth. And seems like it's got nice power on that too. So now the big test, the mother of all tests, is when I drop that balance staff in. Is it going to tick? So this is going to be the tough one. So I'm going to keep the camera running for this because it's just so exciting. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. This is the balance staff from the other movement. I got to grab this carefully and not ruin the friggin' thing as I pull it out. Got too many parts in the way here, so I'm just going to grab this. And this is the balance staff that I made with my one of my lathes. I got a bunch of lathes, so there we go. That's the balance staff there. And just videotaping this while I do this, which is probably going to ruin something. So that's the balance staff. Let me get this out of the way. Now, if this fits, I'm going to be so lucky. If it doesn't, plan D. So you just grab this balance staff. I can't do it with all these goggles and stuff on. And I got a cold. So I put the screw in here backwards. So just move that aside. And then I want to line up. I got to enter it from the other side. It looks like it. So if the pallet fork is on this side, then you make sure the jewel of the balance is on way over here, and then you roll it in so that it rolls into the mouth of the pallet fork. So I'm going to carefully turn this over like so, and then I got to place it in kind of like this. And I'm going to grab this with my tweezers and try not to screw it up. And then I'm going to move the movement instead of moving the balance staff. And I'm just hoping this balance staff fits in here. If it doesn't, I'm screwed. And it doesn't seem to be moving, so I'm just going to play with it for a second here. It's in there. Oh, oh. I'm alive, I'm alive. I think it's barely alive, so I'm going to have to screw that in and then see if there's any end shake problems or whatever it is that's causing it not to tick. Oh, looks like it fell into place there, so. Okay, I'm going to turn the video off and I'm going to screw this screw in and then see if I can get it. And there we go. The watch is a ticking. So, seems like it's working. I just have to time it and test it, and that's the end of the video. So, thanks for watching. I'll throw the thing together and hope you enjoy my videos. I've got a new camera working here, so I can get a little closer on this.